My father was still laughing at me when the television behind his shoulder said my name. The whole house went quiet in a way I had never heard before. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. My sister Jennifer's perfect smile froze. Uncle Tom turned slowly toward the screen, still holding his wine glass like a trophy he had forgotten how to use. My mother put one hand on the edge of the table, as if the floor had tilted under her chair. And my father, Richard Morgan, the man who had spent the last 20 minutes calling me a failure in front of 17 relatives, sat there with gravy on his plate and confusion on his face, while a financial newser began explaining that a secretive billion-dollar fund manager had finally been identified. The anchor said, at only 27, Alex Morgan has become one of the youngest fund managers in the country to oversee more than $4 billion in assets. $4 billion. The number landed on the table harder than any insult my father had thrown at me. 10 minutes earlier, he had called my work little stock apps. He had said I used my phone because I could not afford a real broker. He had told everyone I was drifting through life, wasting my economics degree, embarrassing the family, and refusing to grow up. I had sat there and let him talk. That was the part they never understood about me. Silence was not surrender. Sometimes silence was just a locked door. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always looked beautiful from the outside. Warm windows, white columns wrapped in garland, a wreath on the front door, the smell of turkey, cinnamon, and expensive candles drifting into the hallway like a promise that inside, everything was kind and safe. But inside that house, love had always come with conditions. Achievement was worshipped. Appearances were protected. Weakness was punished with concern so polished it looked like care. My father sat at the head of the table like a judge. He was a retired corporate attorney who still wore cufflinks at family dinners and spoke in verdicts. My mother, Evelyn, sat at the other end, soft voice, sharp eyes, always ready to smooth over cruelty without actually stopping it. My sister Jennifer sat near him, glowing in a cream sweater, one hand on her pregnant stomach, the golden child in human form. Then there was me. I wore dark jeans, a plain blue shirt, and boots I had owned for years. My father looked at me like I had arrived in costume as a disappointment. I had come because my mother had called twice that week and said, "Please, Alex, just one peaceful Thanksgiving." And she always said that before inviting me into a room where peace depended on how much disrespect I could swallow. At first, dinner was normal. Forced compliments. Family updates. Jennifer showing ultrasound photos. Brian talking about a client he could not name but clearly wanted us to admire. My father carved the turkey with the seriousness of a man performing surgery on tradition. Then Uncle Tom asked me, "So, Alex, still doing that stock thing?" I should have lied. I should have said I was freelancing, consulting, searching, anything simple enough for them to ignore. But I said, less. That one word opened the gate. My father set down the carving knife and leaned back. "Still," he said, "there it was. Not a question. A sentence. I manage investments," I said calmly. Brian laughed under his breath. "On your phone." A few people smiled. Not big smiles, just enough to show they were relieved the spotlight was not on them. "I use professional platforms," I said. "Professional platforms," my father repeated, looking around the table. "That is what people call apps now." My mother touched her napkin to her mouth. "Richard." But she did not tell him to stop. He turned back to me. "You are 27, Alex. Your sister is running a whole department. Your cousin just made partner. You have an NYU degree, and you spend your days staring at green and red lines like a teenager playing a game." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "It is not a game." Uncle Tom raised a finger. "Actually, most day trading is closer to gambling than investing. People see a few wins and think they are geniuses." "I am not a day trader," I said. "Then what are you?" Dad asked. That was the moment everyone leaned in a little. Not because they wanted the answer, because they wanted the entertainment. I looked down at my plate. Turkey. Mashed potatoes. Green beans nobody had seasoned enough. The same Thanksgiving meal I had eaten since childhood. The same table where my father had once announced Jennifer's scholarship before dessert, and then asked me why my science fair project had only taken 3rd place. "I run a fund." I said. There was a small silence. Then Brian laughed, not lightly worse, politely. "Fund," he said, "like a group chat where you and your friends pick meme stocks." Several relatives laughed with him. Jennifer gave me the look she used when she wanted to seem kind in front of an audience. "Alex, it is okay to admit you are still figuring things out. Nobody expects you to be perfect." My father nodded. "Exactly. We are not attacking you. We are trying to help you face reality." Reality. They loved that word when they were describing a life they had never investigated. For 4 years, I had let them believe I was struggling. At first it was accidental. When Apex Capital was young, I did not tell anyone because nothing was secure. Then, when the fund started growing, I kept quiet because secrecy was part of the strategy. After that, silence became protection. My family did not ask questions to understand. They asked questions to find hooks. So I gave them nothing. They filled the empty space with the version of me they preferred: the late bloomer, the irresponsible daughter, the cautionary tale. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Dad noticed anyway. See, can't even sit through Thanksgiving without checking the market. It might be work, I said. Work, he smiled, and I hated how familiar that smile was. Alex, work comes with a paycheck, benefits, accountability. You are not working. You are avoiding. My mother sighed. We worry about you. That little apartment, that old car, the way you dress, you never let us help. Because your help has teeth, I thought. Jennifer reached across the table. I could get you an interview at my company. Entry level, probably, but it would be real experience. Thank you, I said. You should take it, Dad said. Pride is expensive when you have nothing. The sentence hit harder than I expected. Not because it was true, because for 1 second, I was 8 years old again, holding a report card with one B, watching my father circle it in red pen while ignoring every A. My phone buzzed again. Then again, I pulled it out under the table and saw the name. James Morrison. My first investor, chairman of Morrison Capital Group. A man who did not call directly unless the building was on fire, the market had collapsed, or the press had done something stupid. I stood. I need to take this. Dadless cracked across the room. Sit down. Everyone froze. I looked at him. No phones at my table, he said. You can play broker after dinner. It is important. More important than family, my mother asked. That was the trap. Family, in our house, meant obedience wearing a holiday sweater. I declined the call and sat. Seconds later, a text appeared. Kelami bio Europirofil iaspire kengina dues. My stomach dropped. For 3 years, Apex Capital had been a ghost story in the financial world. What they did not know was me. Not really. My legal team had built walls. My investors respected discretion, because discretion had made them very rich. I attended meetings under controlled conditions, kept my public footprint tiny, and avoided cameras whenever possible. In our filings, my name existed, but it was buried beneath layers of structure, initials, and entities most casual reporters never bothered to unpack. That was supposed to change on Monday. We had agreed to a planned profile after a long negotiation. Controlled images, controlled quotes, controlled timing. It was part of a larger strategy. Apex was launching a new institutional vehicle, and the mystery had become more expensive than useful. But someone had moved early. Someone had leaked the piece on Thanksgiving night. And now, while my family was explaining that I could not afford a real broker, the television in the next room was telling America I was the broker other brokers were trying to understand. Uncle Tom turned up the volume because he loved financial news more than he loved listening. The anchor's voice filled the dining room. Breaking news from the financial world tonight. Bloomberg has confirmed the identity of the previously unknown manager behind Apex Capital Management, a fund estimated to oversee approximately $4.2 billion in assets. Uncle Tom leaned forward. Apex, he whispered. Brian straightened. I've heard of them. My father glanced at the TV, irritated that anything had interrupted his lecture. The anchor continued. Sources close to the firm confirm that Apex was founded 4 years ago by Alex Morgan, then 23, a New York University economics graduate who built the firm from a small pool of private capital into one of the most closely watched funds on Wall Street. Jennifer's head turned toward me so fast, I thought she might hurt herself. My mother said, "What did they say?" Nobody answered. On screen, a correspondent stood outside my building in Manhattan. Behind her, the black glass doors reflected city lights. I recognized the security guard near the entrance. I recognized the brass line on the lobby wall. I recognized the place where Maya had once spilled coffee on a visiting pension consultant and still closed the account by dinner. The correspondent said, Morgan has maintained an unusually low profile, even as Apex's returns attracted attention from major institutional investors. According to documents reviewed by Bloomberg, the fund has delivered an estimated 43% net return over the past 3 years, outperforming many larger competitors. Forks rested on plates. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered, Alex. My father's face had changed. The confidence was still there, but it had cracks now, thin lines of confusion spreading through it. That cannot be our Alex, Aunt Caroline said. The screen answered her. A photo appeared. Alex Morgan, founder and CIO. Apex Capital Management, age 27. The room became so quiet I could hear the rotator humming from the kitchen. Uncle Tom lowered his wineglass. Brian's mouth opened, then closed. Jennifer looked from the screen to me, then back again, as if waiting for the universe to correct the mistake. My father said nothing. For the first time all night, my father had nothing ready. My phone rang again. This time I stood before anyone could stop me. I'm taking this call, I said. My father did not tell me to sit down. I walked him to the hallway. answered, and heard James Morrison swear before saying hello. Alex, are you watching? Unfortunately. Yes. Where are you? My parents' house. There was a pause. James knew about my family to understand the shape of that disaster. Oh, he said. That is not ideal. Why did it run early? That is what we are finding out. Bloomberg says they received confirmation from a secondary source and considered the story ready. Daniel is on with them now. Maya is coordinating statements. We need you calm, visible, and unreachable by idiots. I looked back toward the dining room. 17 relatives stared at the TV like it had just accused them of something. Too late on the idiots, I said. James exhaled. Is your family safe to be around tonight? The question should have sounded dramatic. It did not. Money changes people, but surprise money reveals them faster. I don't know yet, I said. Then leave. I will. Not eventually. Now, press will find the address. If they got your profile, they may have personal details. Your home, your parents, your sister, old photos, anything. Do not let relatives become sources. I closed my eyes. The worst part was that he was right. My family had spent years dismissing me. But if reporters called, they would suddenly remember stories. They would become experts on my childhood. My father would talk about discipline. My mother would talk about sacrifice. Jennifer would smile beautifully and say we had always been close. They would rewrite my life before I had time to object. I'll call Maya, I said. She already has a car 10 minutes away. Of course she did. When I returned to the dining room, everyone looked at me differently. That was the first revenge. Not something I did. Something that happened when truth entered a room without asking permission. My father stood slowly. Alex! Just my name, no insult. No lecture. No certainty. My mother pressed both hands together under her chin. Honey, why didn't you tell us? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was perfect. Tell you what? I asked. That you were. She looked toward the television. This. I repeated. Jennifer stood too. Her voice had gone soft in a way I did not trust. Alex, this is incredible. I mean, we are shocked, obviously, but proud. We are proud. I looked at my father. He had not said prouder. He was staring at the screen, where another graphic showed Apex Capital's growth over 4 years. Brian cleared his throat. So when you said you run a fund? I meant I run a fund. Uncle Tom looked pale. 4.2 billion. Approximately? I said. He blinked. In assets. No, in mashed potatoes. The line slipped out before I could stop it. Aunt Caroline made a small choking sound. Someone coughed. For one wild second, I thought Jennifer might laugh. She did not. Dad finally turned to me. You let us sit here and make fools of ourselves. There it was. Not apology. Accusation. I felt something inside me go very still. I let you speak, I said. There is a difference. His jaw tightened. You deliberately hid this from your family. You never asked who I worked for. You asked when I was getting a real job. You never asked what I managed. You asked if I had a gambling problem. You never asked where I lived. You mocked my apartment. You never asked what I drove. You mocked my car. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were worried. No, I said gently now, because the truth did not need volume. You were embarrassed. By Friday morning, my face was everywhere. Young fund manager revealed. Low-profile investor behind Apex. 27-year-old founder beats major firms. The mystery woman of Wall Street. Apex had prepared for attention. We had not prepared for my family trying to enter the spotlight wearing muddy shoes. The first problem was Uncle Tom. At 8:17 a.m., he posted a photo from Thanksgiving. Not of me directly, because Maya had stopped him from taking one after the news broke, but an older family photo from last Christmas where I stood at the edge of the frame in a green sweater. Caption: so proud of my niece Alex Morgan, founder of Apex Capital. Always knew she had the investing gift. Thanksgiving was unforgettable. Always knew. I stared at that line for a long time. Then I forwarded it to legal. The second problem was Brian. He messaged me at 9:03. Hey Alex, wild night. Sorry if things got awkward. Listen, I have a client looking for exposure to alternative investments. Could be a good fit for Apex. Also, would love to grab coffee and talk partnership opportunities. Partnership opportunities. This from a man who had compared my career to meme stocks less than 24 hours earlier. The third problem was Jennifer. She did not text at first. She called. I did not answer. Then she sent a long message that began with, I feel like there has been a misunderstanding, and ended with, Mom is devastated that you left like that. Not devastated that they had humiliated me. Devastated that I had not stayed to comfort them through the consequences. My father did not contact me until noon. His message was short. Call me. No apology. I did not call. By afternoon, Maya brought me the real issue. She walked into my office carrying a folder, which meant the problem had become physical. We found the leak path, she said. I looked up from the statement Daniel had drafted. Ooh, not Bloomberg. They got confirmation from someone adjacent to your personal circle. The first tip appears to have gone to a smaller finance blog 2 days ago. That blog shopped it to larger outlets. The original email included your parents' address, Jennifer's married name, and a claim that your family was unaware of your wealth. My stomach tightened. Someone in my family. Maybe. Or someone close to someone in your family. She opened the folder and slid over a printed screenshot. The email address was partially hidden, but the attached image was not. It was a photo of me from a family reunion 3 years earlier. I stood beside Jennifer under a white tent. In the background, Uncle Tom was at the grill. I remembered that day. My father had told everyone I was between opportunities. I had already closed our second major investor that morning. Maya tapped the page. We traced the photo. It was posted privately by your Aunt Caroline in a family album. Someone with access downloaded it. I leaned back. Why leak it? Money. Attention. Maybe spite. The tipster wrote that the story would be more interesting if framed as a secret bidder hiding from her own family. I am not a billionaire. Maya gave me a look. Not officially. Not in the way reporters can cleanly say without lawyers. But the fund economics and your ownership stake make people comfortable guessing. I rubbed my forehead. There was no clean way to stop a story once it learned how to feed itself. What do we do? I asked. Professionally, we stay disciplined. Personally, Maya paused. You decide what access your family still has. Access. That was the real currency now. Not money, not status. Access. For years, they had access to me because I kept hoping they would use it kindly. They used it to measure, mock, and correct. Now they wanted access because my mane had become useful. So I made a list, not an angry list, a clean one. First, I removed every family member from the private holiday fund I had quietly created 2 years earlier to cover emergencies. They did not know it existed. My mother's dental surgery, Aunt Caroline's roof repair, Brian's loan after a bad investment, Jennifer's failed boutique launch before her corporate job. Several things they believed had been solved by luck, payment plans, or anonymous administrative errors had actually been paid by me. I had not done it for gratitude. I had done it because I could, and because some childish part of me thought invisible care still counted as love. It did count, but invisible care should not be endless care. Second, I instructed legal to send a polite but firm notice to relatives who posted about me, using my name or company to attract attention. No threats beyond what was necessary, just boundaries written in language even Uncle Tom could understand. Third, I declined every request for investment access connected to family introductions. Fourth, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Alex, she said breathless. Thank God. I was in my office, looking out at Lower Manhattan. The city was silver under a winter sky. Below me, people crossed streets with coffee cups and scarves, living ordinary lives while my family rearranged itself around a truth it had not earned. Mom, I said, I need to say this once, clearly. Your father feels terrible. Then he can tell me. Silence. He is under a lot of stress, she said. I almost smiled. Even now, she was holding the umbrella over him. So was I said. At dinner, while everyone laughed. We did not know. That is the point. You thought I was poor, so you thought cruelty was safe. She started crying. This time, I did not rush to fix it. I am not cutting you off because I became successful, I said. I am stepping back because success revealed something. You did not respect me when you thought I had nothing. That means you did not respect me. You respected outcomes. Alex, please don't say that. It is true. What do you want us to do? I looked at the folder on my desk, at Uncle Tom's post. Brian's message. Jennifer's careful blame. My father's command to call him. I want a real apology. Not for not knowing. For what you did when you thought you knew. As she whispered. I don't know if your father can do that. Then he can practice. I ended the call gently. 2 days passed. The legal notices worked quickly. Uncle Tom deleted his post and sent me a message that said he had been misunderstood. Brian sent a longer message using words like synergy and unfortunate tone. I did not respond. Jennifer finally sent one sentence that almost sounded real. I am sorry I treated you like someone to fix instead of someone to know. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, thank you. That is a start. My father waited until Sunday night. He did not text. He came to my building. Security called up. Your father is in the lobby. He does not have an appointment. The old me would have panicked. The old me would have gone down immediately, afraid of seeming rude. The new me looked at my calendar, finished the paragraph I was reading, and said, please have him wait in the private conference room. I let him wait 20 minutes, not to be cruel. To remind both of us that my time was not a hallway he could walk into whenever he wanted. When I entered, he stood by the window in his wool coat, looking smaller than he had at the head of the Thanksgiving table. Manhattan glittered behind him. For once, the room belonged to me. Alex, he said. Dad. He looked around. This is a very impressive office. Thank you. Another silence. Then he took a breath. I was wrong. 3 words. Simple words. Words I had wanted from him since childhood. But I had grown enough to know that wanting something did not mean accepting the least possible version of it. About what? I asked. His jaw moved. Pride fought him. I watched it happen. About your work, he said. That is not enough. His eyes sharpened, then softened again. He looked tired. About you, he said. I was wrong about you. I spoke to you like you were a problem to solve. I embarrassed you in front of the family. I called you a failure. I should not have done that. My chest hurt. Not because the apology fixed everything. Because it proved he had always known the language. He had simply chosen not to use it until the cost of silence became too high. Why? I asked. He frowned. Why what? Why was it so easy to believe the worst of me? He looked out the window. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, quietly, because I did not understand a life I could not control. That was the closest thing to honesty my father had ever given me. I sat across from him. I am not going to pretend Thanksgiving did not happen, I said. And I am not going to reward anyone for suddenly deciding I matter, because my name was on television. He nodded once. I understand. I am also not your family bank. No introductions, no interviews, no public stories. If people ask, you say you are proud and you respect my privacy. That is it. I will do that. He looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. Yes, he said. I will. We did not hug. Not then. Some endings are not made of hugs. Some are made of boundaries that finally hold. Months later, Thanksgiving came again. I did not go to my parents' house. Instead, I hosted dinner in my own apartment. Not the tiny one they had imagined, but the quiet Tribeca home with tall windows, a long wooden table, and enough space for peace to move around freely. I invited Maya, 2 analysts who could not fly home, my old economics professor's widow, and 3 friends who had known me before headlines and never once asked what I was worth before deciding how to treat me. Jennifer came for dessert. Alone. She brought pie from a grocery store, not a boutique bakery, and laughed when it collapsed a little on the plate. We talked carefully, but honestly. That was new. My mother sent flowers. The card said, "We are learning." My father sent no gift, just a note in his own handwriting. I am proud of who you are, not only what you built. I kept that note. Not because it erased the past. Because it marked the first time he had tried to meet me without standing above me. A week after that first disastrous Thanksgiving, a reporter asked me during an interview what had surprised me most about becoming publicly successful. I thought about the dining room. The turkey cooling on the table. The television glow on my father's face. The way every person who had mocked me suddenly wanted to stand close enough to be included in the story. Then I said, success does not change how people see you. It reveals whether they were ever looking at you at all. The clip went viral. People called it a powerful quote. A perfect line. A billionaire mindset. Which made me laugh because strangers are just as eager as family to make myths out of people they do not know. But to me, it was not a quote. It was a warning. Do not wait for a television screen, a title, a bank account, or a headline to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Build quietly if you have to. Grow privately if you must. Let them laugh at the small version of you they invented. Because one day, the truth may enter the room behind them. And when it does, you will not need to shout. You will only need to stand up, take your coat, and walk into the life they were too blind to see.